Okay, so just to recalibrate, we're talking. I was talking about worldview and how I became Christian and so forth, and how it made me change. So I'm going to get right into it. So I became a Christian, was reading the Bible, started my relationship with God, and was wondering how to have that relationship with God. And then later came to the belief and understanding through a preacher named Billy Graham that I heard in 1994 preach, and he started telling me where basically to read in Matthew to understand further who Jesus is. Because I was like, who is this guy? I grew up not knowing, a lot of people might say, oh, well, you grew up as a church kid. I didn't go to church my whole life up till that point, 23 years old. Started going to church a little bit after I started reading the Bible, about 3 or 4 months after I became what one would call have a conversion to Christianity. And so I started reading that Bible, and then I looked in the book of Matthew. So if you're trying to look for who Jesus is and you want some place to look in the Bible, I would just start with the book of Matthew. A lot of people will say start with the book of John. Well, just start with the book of Matthew and start reading, start understanding who Jesus is. And, really he's revealed in the Old Testament as well, but we won't get into that deep. So if you're looking for that and you want to learn more about him, that's where you want to read. And what version of the Bible? Well, why are there versions? That's a good another topic we can go into very briefly. It's a translation. It's just like if I were to receive a letter from my grandmother, and who's Dutch, she's writes it in Dutch. I don't read Dutch. I don't speak Dutch, so I get a translator. The translator does the best he can, so he can translate for me, and that's what it is. That's why we have different versions, but they're different translations. And sometimes you can translate it this way. If I have a letter, and it's read to me, the person reading it, oh well, they're just asking you where you live. Yeah, but this is the whole page. Yeah, but it's the gist. That's the gist. So some translations are kind of like that. They're what's called a dynamic equivalence, or they paraphrase, or whatever it might be. Then some are literal word for word translations, like the New American Standard Bible, the ESV, the English Standard Version. Those kind of Bibles, where that's my favorite kind, is because I want to know what he actually said. Okay, so I go for the word for word translation. So that's why we have different ones. We can get into it differently. That's a bigger issue, but some people cite that as why they don't believe, because it's all man-made. But no, it's just a translation. Those are different translations. We can get into that later. But I was reading Matthew, and I'd suggest you read the New International Version, 1984 version. It's a good one. The ESV is probably the best contemporary version right now in our language, English. So I read that, and I came to the understanding that Jesus is God and he's man. I don't understand that. Do I expect that you will? Not necessarily. Will you ask me questions on it? I won't know how to answer a lot of it. But Steve, look, I understand. There's a lot we don't know. Okay? But there's a lot that we do. And what's evident in the scriptures in Revelation is that God is God, and there's a way to get to him, and it's through his son. He sent his son so we could have life. So anyways, that's what I believe. So where I am in terms of that belief has now informed a lot of the way I think, because I believe that. Now let's take another thing. Now science, okay? Science, a lot of people say, oh, I don't believe in the Bible, I believe in science. Okay, so let's talk about that, and and here's what I would say with your beliefs there. I would promote to you that if you're going to ask questions of the Bible and of Christianity, ask the same questions of everyone. Be equitable. Be consistent in how you, whether it's an attack, whether it's an accusation, whether it's a journalistic skepticism, whether it's a genuine curiosity. My suggestion is to you, and I think it's consistent, and I think it's intellectually honest, approach everything in the same manner of skepticism if you're going to do that. And a lot of people will just assume that science is not a belief. Oh, science is proven. No, you know what's proven is math. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay? 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay? So we have some issues regarding that. Science is something that really, when you look at it, there's so many different people that do things differently. If somebody gets something wrong in their test and their hypothesis and they claim it as a conclusion, how are you to believe that? And who came up with the test? I think what we need to do is start asking more questions of science, because science used to say that the world was flat. Then science started saying, well, wait, the world is a sphere. And then everybody said, no, it's not a sphere. There's all kinds of things. Right now, there's the thought of evolution. We grew up when I was in school learning about evolution. Now they're talking about intelligent design. And even non-Christians and even non-religious folks, or people that don't even believe in God, believe in intelligent design. And they have debunked evolution. There's a big debate on that, and then some of the colleges are behind in the scientific studies. You've heard the studies, and maybe you haven't, that coffee, they did a study and coffee was harmful for you. Then the next year, they did a study and coffee was beneficial for you. So which is it? Science, what do you mean when you talk about science? And so what I would say to you is, if you're going to have a worldview, and see, some people see the world through science. So they say, oh, the world is going to be destroyed because of global warming. Okay, no, it's not warming, it's climate change. Oh, wait, it's not climate change, it's warming again. So there's all kinds of things that we have to look at when we look at our belief system. Because I believe, this is something I believe, is that science is a belief system. That science is in some way a religion. Okay? Why? Because if you commit the sin against the world and you hurt that, then there's something to be said. Then you need to be punished. There's not necessarily, from what I see, the consensus, and see, that's the problem with it. There's a consensus that such and such is true. Well, who are these guys? And then the same people that say to me, I don't believe God or the Bible because it's just a book written by men. Okay. I don't believe science because it's just a bunch of postulates or declarations, conclusions made by men. Okay? I'm using your same logic if that's the case, if that's what you think. So anyways, where does that lead us to? Well, that leads us to either, science, and they'll be, wait, but science is fact. No, what if it's not? What if something's wrong? What if people make a statement and say, hey, maybe they say one day, they say, you need to take this vaccination because it's been tested. And then it comes out to be that some of those people really didn't give you all the right information. They just kind of hid it from you. And then they come out later and say, you know what, they weren't really effective, like the things they were saying about masks now. So it comes out that masks, if you wore an N95 mask an hour after you've been wearing it, it's harmful for you. They weren't saying that, 2-3 years ago. So that's science for you. So I'm not saying all science is wrong, and I'm not saying I don't take, I don't. I look at science and say, okay, I'm going to dismiss it, and I'm not going to say I dismiss climate change, and I'm not going to say I dismiss, all these other things or a vaccination outright. But I do think that it's important for us to understand that the way we look at the world is it's very important that we indeed look at the world in a way that we understand and have convictions about, but we also are realistic about, and we are consistent in how we hold all of the views that are out there to the same scrutiny, rather than just saying, okay, and let me give you one last example because it's running a little longer than I wanted, but let's look at let's look at it this way. Okay, there are 3,000 plus manuscripts of the Bible. Okay, but a lot of people don't believe it. But yet the same people will believe, and I don't have the numbers. I'm not the biggest scholar in the world, but I do remember reading this. So, but the scholars look at Shakespeare, and I don't think, but he had like 50, maybe even less transcripts of his writings. Well, why do you believe he existed? Why do you believe that he wrote what he wrote? He has less evidence out there than the Bible. What about a lot of the Roman history? They didn't have that many transcripts, but yet we'll buy that. So I think that when you look at things, we're ready to accept certain things with less scrutiny than others. Now, I will say this. The Bible, because of what it claims, doesn't shy away from scrutiny. And I invite you to do that because I'm not going to defend the Bible because the Bible will defend itself. Okay? However, I think it's incumbent upon you to treat everything consistently. And that's the same in life. Now, I think we're inconsistent just as humans. So you're going to have points of inconsistency. I do. However, you need to realize that and know that where you're coming from, our weaknesses and our strengths, so that we can come to the truth. Because what matters is the truth. I have other things to say about the truth, but they will have to hold on for another day. I really appreciate the fact that you stayed on this long to listen to me speak about these things. I hope that's helpful. Even if you don't agree with me, I really appreciate that you watched because that shows that you have some maturity about yourself and that you want to listen through completely. And you always want to look at people you disagree with and listen. And that's one of the great things about YouTube here is that I spoke and we're not arguing at each other. You're listening. And I appreciate that, and I want to have that opportunity to listen to you as well, and I welcome that. You have a fantastic night. Do marvelously well.